真不多的牛米上，我们我们全部人家到到个到我们全都什么都，东巴的这站了给上子。第一种的对象是把小家的把这个刚到初级就等于。看不见等那sem sem nam la chur ton ba te jan sa ba jab jan ba yang do par zo ba san ji xia chao chu ya tong zhang ji ten ji kan jan等那样想呢穷等的te jan sa ba jab jan ba yang do par zo ba san ji xia jia de bi chu ya de gen ne ren bo ji zhong xin ge zhong da na ren bo ji sen ge吃进步了，节目中接的这个那么对象是吧？对到所属乡镇啊，对的好像就生活进步做。促进步当上至生活本部进步啥热呢？同的南卡兰国巴的同同呢，我们是当然的，觉得所属对象是吧？对兰德个接告诉，接所有的中等的对象，中等的上至生活进步活动忙起吧，张忙起吧，刚当的你老巴的到。这个的所有吧，当对象是吧？这准备上都不做不上，这的个人个家长啊，这个来用这个机。Kapsardo rikiwa taga kang te yitsam jir do chigi tang shan zu sanwa chenpo shan be shan chungdan de shakti te pe gong la nami bayang to par zoba shan chibda long tamba de chungdan de shakti ta pa te la tondan jar te chungdan de te shan shakba rab chun bayang to par zoba sang ki shakti ta pa ti lan dumbar ngir ki te le kyut nyon chi tene chungdan de shan chu chungdan de tene chungdan de ki shan zu sanwa chenpo ma ba shan ba la kapsarwa ma pamba kang taga kyoda nga lang ni chenpo人前部的这完了，马盘把老说，对你中等的人，他们知道咱比上就生会做了，不搞啥多的机会，到对象说吧，一起进同啊，当对象说比进就我，第二当对象说比真嘞，当对象说吧，number 2当对象说吧，特讲啊，当对象说比爬入啊，number 当对象说吧。这准备样都不做不上街的，都样都不รับ的，东北人有的都对以前的乡村生活进步的，他们只懒得这么些，就想到过去làm thấp tâm bờ kỳ sĩ de ne, trong den de kỳ sự sự Japan da kapsar do jama yembi sự nam nghe sát chứ, rigio da tham chỉ da rap da drum de jang sa ji yi si sam ma kem da lam cái nam jam bờ ma si ji,更加单上战单修，更加年不着着。오늘부터 대장 서바 남기 옴사라 공준 마쇼 추는 냠버 쇼 녜네 제적을 버려 공고지 탐치 대좀 남야 마치 지 나버는 전방잔도 소마 연나 아이시 남자 남자 요마메 대로서베 추접 특chất 담만 니리샹 데레 차장메 녜네 추 데랍도 담바시 데도 진짜 지당 알레년 데네 정든데 이 즉습자바 데가 자네 장주 생활 전부 시험발랍 갑자라 마판바 교도 무브르쇼 교 콩도 집르쇼 마판바 교도 장주 생활 전부 호도메바 정메바 삼기미티바 잔데메바 잔데메바 강 교도 흥은 마음통과 사람네돈 돈비상 주상화대 담주 본다도 너 마판방에 인직된지 감맘지 빈들라나메바 양도 벌조 샹집 공부도 벌상 게네 아니지 라나메바 양도 벌조 샹집도 뜻대 용수 흥우수 리기원데 등은 예 샹집지 추운도 용서만 버시베랍도 고바 용서 네버시바 좀바 콩도 집으시바 마판바 장주상화 전부 대등은 직된지 감맘지 바디고네 남기 감기 용서 네 대 가동당 노노바 아당 처전의 연락시바 주바도 고르기와 대등은 던즈 먹가장 던즈 메바가 좀바 문두르 존지 잠바도 고 마판바 리기원 대등은 웬발람 공부진바 가장 웬발람 공부메바도 리기원 대등은 사도 몰랍된디 먹네서 리기원 대등은 던즈 메비 쇼발라가 추지가 무바 산지지 이시라 좀바도 고 되는 정도인데 지츠즈자바 데도 갑자로 장주 상환도 홍매지 데도 삼기매죠 잠매죠 점지제로 도바나바나 그러시야 몽보지시 나인데도 탐집 상접도 용서만 봐 나이샤 ngai yang nan ko de de tam ji ngai men xie de xiang zhi zhen huan de ngai wo de tam ji gu de yang la mu den zi san na de de bong xie ba ngai xiu ba qiu ge ji lu jiang ngai ngai wen de den zi me bu xiu de nam ga yong zhen zhen bu ri ne yang de dong ne wo ne ho yang di gu na hua jin de gu na hua ne mi yong se xie de xiang zhi dan ban de ne gen zhe jiang nian chen de ne wo yu de xin de zuo de tam ji zun ji zhan ba dan huo de me ba xi ba ro dun jiang de mam ji de wa yang chun che bi wo se ren de tam ji ngai ne xiang zhi dan ban de ne nge to ne zhong ji ga ya de yi xiang zhong de chu jing ku lo la na me ba gu ro tam ji xiang jim zhong de men ba xi zhe me yang de ngai ci gen de ne tu ne tam ji nga dang dan ba da ba ji ngai de de xiang ji zhong de ran nge ne de tam ji yong men xi de ne xiang ji zhen hua qian bu xian ba dang zhang zu zhen hua qian bu xue zhe zhe ge dong mang bu ngom ca de ji de zhi da na zhong de de ge ji ji ne yang rang bu ma long ba zhang zu zhen hua张美班的你的拉那美班样都不做不想接的样都不觉得用是门本在多年在的年末的呢中等的老乡就生活进步先变得个接受多中等的这种说法说呢就是话设计内地设计中的我们不兄的该一种其实呢现在马上我想就是你不就当把适合的拉那美班样都不做不想接的我们不做不上的呢中等的地的呢路日子好咱们那个中等的中等的地的这么地的人手边在把火忙起吧，当地人手边kim秋的节儿当地人手边跑路了，弄把在把上就在为这个。操党上就生活碰碰的中等的基地的咱们就来那没办样都不上去的，这得用是member 在的中等的上就生活操党上就生活碰碰的都个了些超出动作这么讲，他们你把咱们的中等的活的忙起吧，得到张忙起比上就生活得到呢。因人不曾不学吧，上地点弄不了。给在真把过来点东门不用孙子不是这吧，中等的那个会南目前是个在那路你是人家路你是人家路班了，人呢通我浪出站那不通民那做当当班该是个起来我第一我路家路吧，第一我路家路吧，东家日地问的等呢，你问的你我是这个没办法，我路边吧路吧，地讲的个等等那个怕的这把是把有那金钱那中等的没地吃了，这点把一切不门就是被一切不搞老说中等的对人的对人说白了那没办法都不想知道。我们做不上业呢，让不马龙不上就生活，进步活动嘛，基本我们需要抽出点动我们不参不需要把因人不呢上积极一些了，你不是把当然自己国家成了，你不是把当担保了开吧。我们是把全部用手想啊，给把上积极啥了开吧，对象说不出那么样的不是就把了开吧，这个。我们在当马的结尾，总之当多当特多全把托把得到，中等的今得个的，你得到托马那上就社会产的那样的不是做的用是门不是西乡用是我的，那那没把样的不是像这的我们做不是上街呢，你按你几总之当跑的全班的到他们去西所去送吧啦，中等的到这么的上说吧马了，的上说吧人马了吧送吧的顿的，的上说吧你今天多些，的上说吧了一起吧。lag moje jordan de shanchu san hwa thagba la khsar de jigba yang tagbar jigba na anen da la tetsum sarwan gero de jang shaba yong sam nyeng len de ne chuji nam jang do thuna yid ma chi be tap mu ba manjer de jordan de ti la ta de da chu phong bar gerwa le ngum bar giba da dam bar gero jene da chag jang chun da la tetsum sarwar manjer maung di na yang rigji wa gam rigji wo mo shanchu san hwa thagba la ta thuna yang tetsum sarwan manjer jordan de ji tun de lag 샤도 소르 되니 장주상과 생화 진보 셴비 정든데 라 측습 자반도 독소르도 공제상 기연에 서급담은 저지네네 문버쇼네 종지라야 종지른가 야라 장주 냠니 반지든 공보 어때나 연마라 jigzhide de la no janma we zo chen karwa she ke pa te zum chur to la ne jam ma yo wa lag la ba she re to byang to ber re chi pa mo ta ma ku pa te dong de to ne tang de la ji te no do bo chan dan lo me lo ma che tham cha thar je ki dang che de chi 교질 마비숑 던자 때다가 장주 선화 찌르 이치 인제르 대종종 비라답 갑자르 때 돈도 제진 초기 너르셔도 소르 회난다나 깨베 라라직 자르네 로는니시 학론 바 존 톤바 랑조 짱넉디 자르네 로는 자르네 로갸론라 버톤 짱 짜랴 니르마 짠딱더까터 너너덕지 리프키 인치나 토르마트는 던자 ndataga jitin gumbo shinda ichi ka devjin jondin de jang shkirjun ba shangchu sen hwam kheba mambo da tandang danjang mo jig shirib jang kwira shiwa tongda lagbar lawa tandang danjang shirib khebran gir tamchid shyabjin zangjang tana de churno tallam bebjang menjig ba jigden namban den ba yongso long tar cha ba mamji dewa te namki kamla to de ne ma la sang ji shang chu de ne yongso re jang de ro she di zhe nom zong ji ji den ji dem gong bu ngong sum to ne is ngong sum to be na da zhe la na te chum jar ma ji jigden nam jen ning da ba na de la zhe da wer ne yi chi ge ne de la ne te chum zar wa ye shang ju sen hua ngan zhu chi sa re zhong den zhi de 집 생활은 문제 지진 때는 롱탄 소르 담비 주파 막가로래 장주 생활 사람네 돈비 레게 지샤와 때 저저 바워
It is really important for us to receive the transmission before we start our lesson. However, I can understand that some of our online Dharma friends who may not place much importance on this, and I understand why, because they may not pay much attention to the importance of transmission. Moreover, they have never had this kind of habit or concept before. As a result, most people may think that just simply understanding the content of the Lotus Sutra or its meaning is sufficient. As for the so-called transmission and blessings, some Dharma friends may not pay much attention to these aspects. This is one reason. There are two different situations here. There is one group of people who is from academic circles among us, and they just trying to understand the Dharma teachings. They might want to know what the ultimate thought of the Lotus Sutra is, whether its views conflict with the thoughts of other religions, whether there are similarities, and so on. Their analysis may mainly focus on these aspects. For people like this, it's fine to just listen to the teachings. For those of us who are genuine Buddhists, in addition to understanding the Dharma teachings, we must acknowledge that there is also something called transmission. It's just like when we transmit precepts, there is also a substance of precepts. This is obtained from the preceptor's mind stream by everyone. So generally speaking, whether teaching sutras or treatises, it's best if the teacher also has an authentic transmission. Then they will have the substance of precepts in their mind stream and the blessings and wisdom of the Dharma lineage, as well as the mind stream of their compassion, which can continuously be planted in your mind stream. In this way, for you personally, on one hand, in the future, when you have the opportunity to transmit to others, if there is no break in between, you will be qualified to transmit. But if there is a break, then of course the principles you transmit to others will be incomplete, not complete. Everyone should understand this point. I just wanted to mention this briefly. Overall, everyone is studying the Lotus Sutra very well and taking it very seriously, because in our course lasting over a year, generally speaking, many people might gradually lose interest. No one left. On the other hand, many people have also joined. Among those 5,000 who left before, some have returned, which is also possible. Now, in the Lotus Sutra we're teaching, let me first share a simple story. One is about a person who recited the Lotus Sutra and encountered various kinds of harm, including from Rakshasas, Yakshas, and other non-human beings. These non-human beings can also be liberated from causing harm. It's said that there was a person who regularly recited the Lotus Sutra, which is a renunciant, a monk. Later, because there was a Rakshasa woman, she would often manifest as a beautiful woman before him to seduce him. Eventually he had relations with her and he felt very sorrowful. At this time the Rakshasa woman made him faint, perhaps like being empowered by a demon. Then she carried him flying through the sky. In many stories about Rakshasa women, they carry people and fly directly. This also exists in Chinese Han Buddhism and in history as well. Tibetan area also has same situation. At that time, as she was flying through the sky carrying this monk, they passed over a monastery. Someone in the monastery was reciting the Lotus Sutra. Through the power of interdependence, this reciting sound have reached the ears of the unconscious monk. At this moment, because he had also recited the Lotus Sutra before, this sound reminded him, and he also began to recite silently. At first he recited word by word, little by little. Later, perhaps through this power of interdependence, he was able to recite it. After reciting, when he began to recite the Lotus Sutra, the Rakshasa woman could no longer carry him. His body became heavier and heavier. She really had no choice, so finally she threw him at the monastery gate. The Rakshasa woman left by herself. After she left, the monk had already awakened, but after waking up, he really wanted to stay in this monastery because he was already 1,000 kilometers away from his original place. It was very far. It would be difficult to return. At this time he was also very distressed, because if he entered this monastery, he did not have pure precepts indeed. He was not qualified to dwell with the Sangha. At this time, when he was very distressed, the senior monk permitted him to stay. He said, if you were seduced by a demon woman and were not conscious, actually the precepts were not broken. So he allowed him to be accepted. Later this monk lived in this monastery and continued to propagate and practice the Lotus Sutra. This is also a true story with such an account. So normally in our daily lives, if we regularly carry Dharma texts and often recite the Lotus Sutra, it can dispel many non-human beings and external demons, as well as some inauspicious signs. Many inauspicious things can be dispelled. Now among our lay Buddhist communities, some are also reciting the Lotus Sutra, including Dharma teachers from various classes. The situations of these Dharma teachers are all different. Every group in the world is like this. The main leader plays a certain role. For example, if I am the Khenpo or Khenmo leading the class and I have great faith in the Lotus Sutra, I encourage everyone to recite the Lotus Sutra, and everyone says, okay, then we start reciting. But if I'm not necessarily that enthusiastic about the Lotus Sutra, saying, never mind, let's take our time, we'll talk about it later, then it may not happen. We also understand this. Everyone's mindset and inclination are different. It's the same with worldly teachers. So this time we haven't required everyone to recite, read, or write. This is entirely voluntary, as everyone knows that among all the sutras, the Lotus Sutra indeed has inconceivable merit and profound meaning. Now let me continue teaching. Yesterday we already talked about how many retinues came before Shakyamuni Buddha. They said they would propagate the Dharma. At that time the Buddha said, we don't need for you to propagate the Lotus Sutra. I have my own bodhisattvas who will propagate it. Of course, yesterday in my tone I was perhaps joking a bit, talking about competing for positions and competitiveness. Actually, we shouldn't use these words before Buddhas and bodhisattvas, but sometimes to keep everyone from falling asleep during class. And also, for some people don't doze off, sometimes I will make the atmosphere a bit more lively. Later, when organizing notes, it's best to use more neutral words when using these terms. Otherwise, after a long period of time, if some words are written down directly like this, they may not be very appropriate, because spoken words in the moment are somewhat different from written text later. Other than that, I truly don't have any disrespect toward Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, but sometimes when we explain using some worldly concepts, everyone might understand a bit better. So, as we learned yesterday, Many bodhisattvas came from the worlds below the Buddha. We finished discussing these bodhisattvas yesterday. At that time, it was Bodhisattva Maitreya who raised the questions. Bodhisattva Maitreya, representing bodhisattvas equal to the sands of 8,000 Ganges rivers, asked about these matters. And then, immediately following, this Lotus Assembly, that is, the Lotus Dharma Assembly, had not yet dispersed. At that time, Shakyamuni Buddha's emanations, which are all the Buddhas from immeasurable thousands of myriads of kotis of lands in the 8 directions, were all still present. We also discussed yesterday that under various Bodhi trees on jeweled seats, at that time Shakyamuni Buddha's emanations, who came from immeasurable, limitless thousands of myriads of kotis of other lands, were seated under jeweled trees in the 8 directions, east, south, west, north, and the 4 intermediate directions. They were all seated on lion thrones in full lotus posture. At that very moment, all these Buddhas had attendants, as we discussed the other day. These attendants also each saw so many great bodhisattvas emerging from beneath the earth. In the 4 directions of the great manifold cosmos, actually when these bodhisattvas appeared, it wasn't in just one place. They should have appeared in various different worlds, appearing from the worlds below, when they emerged from the great earth and dwelled in space. These attendants also felt it was very rare. Then they asked their respective Buddhas, because under each Bodhi tree there were many Buddhas, and before each Buddha were these attendants. These attendants began to ask their own Tathagatas, O Bhagavat, these immeasurable, limitless, incalculable numbers of bodhisattvas, so many great bodhisattvas, where exactly did they come from? They also had this doubt. Yesterday, Bodhisattva Maitreya, who representing bodhisattvas equal to the sands of 8,000 Ganges rivers, also said, where did these bodhisattvas come from? What teachings do they practice? Where are their lands? And so forth. Many questions were asked. Similarly, the attendants of these emanation Buddhas and so many Buddhas' attendants, the Buddhas should understand, so they didn't say much. The Buddhas didn't ask. After all, bodhisattvas may not be very proficient in the many profound meanings of the great cosmos, so they began to ask. Where did these bodhisattvas come from? At that time, each Buddha told their own attendants, all Buddhas are of one taste and one essence in wisdom, so they all understood very clearly. They told their respective disciples, that is, the attendants, they said, O sons of virtuous families, please wait a moment, don't be anxious, don't be so hasty. Right now, everyone is paying attention to this matter. Bodhisattva Maitreya is also asking about it. There is a Bodhisattva Mahasattva named Maitreya. If you don't recognize Bodhisattva Maitreya, he has been predicted by Shakyamuni Buddha, and after Shakyamuni Buddha passes, he will become a Buddha called Maitreya Buddha. This Bodhisattva is an extremely remarkable, noble one, and is asking the Buddha about this matter as well now. The Buddha will also answer this question very soon. So you all wait, please, and then you can listen the answer from Buddha. You don't need to ask us. Bodhisattva Maitreya is asking Shakyamuni Buddha right now. When Shakyamuni Buddha answers everyone, you should listen to Shakyamuni Buddha explain about where exactly these bodhisattvas came from. Then it should be very clear. Actually, sometimes when I read the sutras myself, the Buddha's wisdom and these teachings are truly extraordinary. What we commonly call movies and television shows simply cannot compare to the brilliance of the Buddha at all. Sometimes they have very profound meanings. Moreover, whether it's the prose sections or the verses, the literary quality is excellent. The translators and translation masters of the past were truly remarkable. And the compilers of Buddhist sutras were also remarkable. So with our current writing, if we were to express this prose in verse form, we might find it very difficult. Some people think, oh, the culture of ancient people was somehow not good. Actually, when you truly examine it, whether from the perspective of poetics or rhetoric or from other perspectives using classical Chinese and poetry, when comparing various aspects, there are indeed many profound meanings within. Therefore, when we study, we shouldn't only study modern knowledge and modern methods of propagating the Dharma. At the same time, we should also propagate and study traditional Buddhist sutras, their literary style and grammar. They have very marvelous styles. Everyone should be clear about this. At that time, when these bodhisattvas were preparing to ask the Buddhas told their attendants, you can directly listen to Shakyamuni Buddha's answer to Bodhisattva Maitreya. At that time, Shakyamuni Buddha told Bodhisattva Maitreya Excellent, excellent, O Ajita. Ajita means the unconquered one who does not fail. Mapampa is another translation name for Bodhisattva Maitreya. He has different names. Ajita is Sanskrit. A means not, and Yita means failure, so unconquered. Maitreya, when translated, means loving kindness, compassionate one. Jampa also means loving kindness. It's also Sanskrit. But these two are different names. He told Bodhisattva Maitreya, your question is very good this time. The question you asked the Buddha is such a great matter. Sometimes there are great differences among questioners. If the questioner is especially wise and can grasp the proper measure, and if the object or target being questioned is very wise, they can draw out a great deal of wisdom. But if the questioner asks only very superficially and does not inquire into profound meanings or merely offends the other party, then nothing of value can be obtained. Therefore, the person who asks the question is actually very important. Sometimes when we accept interviews, first of all, if the interviewer themselves are genuinely concerned with learning in many different fields, and if they ask thoughtful and insightful questions of many people, then engaging in a dialogue with them can be meaningful. But if they ask very superficial questions, the conclusions drawn won't be very good either. Generally speaking, especially for some successful journalists, for example, if they want to have a dialogue or interview with someone 1 or 2 years beforehand, like some especially successful news reporters in Western countries, they prepare extremely thoroughly. So the Buddha also affirmed and praised Bodhisattva Maitreya, saying, your question is very good. Now you should all wholeheartedly don the armor of diligence and generate a firm mind. This is also very important because the Buddha is about to answer this question. If the Buddha is about to answer this question, but we as listeners don't listen carefully, then his answers won't be of much use. If they're not diligent, the content he answers also cannot be applied. And if they don't have a firm mind, it won't last long. At first they remember a little, but after some time passes, they have no idea what was asked or answered. Some people ask questions just for fun. What exactly did they say? They haven't deeply considered it by themselves. They just casually ask, did I ask a question? Yes, I asked a question. Some people just want to tell others, I once asked somebody a question. Beyond that, they haven't specially considered it. Some people in their lives, in their practice, and in worldly matters have encountered some doubts, and these doubts truly haven't been resolved for a long time. In this case, what they ask may still have some meaning. So the Buddha also told them, if I'm about to answer, you must be very diligent with a firm mindset and very focused to listen. Actually, these are all very important. Although we are not Bodhisattva Maitreya, we as later students can completely apply all of these mindsets. So for an ordinary guru, a Khenpo, Khenmo, or Dharma teacher, no matter who is giving the teaching, when they speak, one should remain focused, diligent, and maintain a firm and stable mind. These 3 points are very important. If you have a firm and stable mind, then in the future, the principles he taught may still be remembered clearly, even decades later, even at the time of death. So in the past, in Tibetan area, many elderly masters and great accomplished practitioners, when they were very young, in their 20s, heard certain teachings from a particular master. How did he teach at that time? Some may have recorded it in books, some didn't record it in books but remembered it in their hearts. But when they reached 70 or 80 years old, the memory is still fresh. This is very admirable. So you see, at that time, the Buddha required them to remember it. The Tathagata is preparing to reveal this matter. The Tathagata is preparing to proclaim the Buddha's wisdom. What is the Buddha's wisdom? Here he says the Tathagata's inherent transcendent powers. In Tibetan it says the power of display. That is to say, the Buddha displays various miraculous powers and the profound meaning of these transcendent powers before sentient beings. These principles will also be taught. Then the Tathagata's lion-like dignified power. Regarding lion's vigor, when we taught the ornament of clear realization, we also discussed a samadhi. Actually, a lion first crouches, and then when it begins to leap from a cliff, all the hair on its body stands upright. At this time, All other animals are very frightened. It has a kind of courageous power, fearless power. This is the Tathagata's fearless power of great wisdom that will be proclaimed. And also the Buddha's majestic and mighty power. What does he proclaim? He proclaims the subduing of all demon hosts. Subduing many things, including our afflictions and conceptual thoughts. This kind of wisdom, actually the word power here, when we discuss the 10 powers of the Buddha, are all used in relation to wisdom. Therefore, here it seems that in the words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra, it says that they correspond to the future, past, and present. The transcendent power refers to the past, the power of lion's vigor refers to the present, and the majestic power refers to the future. Corresponding to the 3 times is also acceptable, but actually, through the Buddha's wisdom, he enables sentient beings to be without fear, to subdue afflictions, and to obtain the wisdom of freedom. This principle will be explained to everyone very soon. So actually, there are many profound meanings in the answers within this, because Bodhisattva Maitreya also has doubts, as do others. Bodhisattva Maitreya himself seems fine, but he also has a little bit of doubt at the beginning. As for the other bodhisattvas, including the attendant bodhisattvas of these Buddhas, they all have doubts. The Buddha addresses this in this way. Below, the Bhagavat explains this principle in verse form. Below it says, you must be wholeheartedly diligent. I want to address the questions mentioned above. Your minds should be focused. If your minds are not focused, even if explained, they probably won't be retained later. You should not have doubts, or in Tibetan it says, do not have a very timid mind. With a timid mind, there may be no way to accept it. The Buddha can be said to possess inconceivable wisdom. The Buddha's wisdom is extremely difficult to fathom, truly inconceivable. So here the Buddha first says, you must remain focused and free of doubt. The other day I heard a professor from Taiwan, when he was explaining some worldly principles, he said that Chinese people tend to have the most doubts. They don't easily trust anyone. They are suspicious of everyone. If someone treats them kindly, they still doubt it. Why is he being nice to me? They assume the person must have ulterior motives. If someone treats you badly, they ask, why is this so? They have a lot of doubts. But I don't know, perhaps people around the world have doubts. It's not just China. I see Western people also have many doubts. Why is this? Why is this? Why? With one question, looking this way, why is this so? Why is this? Why is this? So sometimes our ordinary people indeed don't really believe in the truth, but in what is unreasonable they especially believe. They constantly have doubts about the truth. The Buddha is completely different. The Buddha has inconceivable wisdom. In the Mahayana Ganavyuha Sutra it says, the Buddha's wisdom is inconceivable. All is perfectly complete, obtaining freedom and fearlessness. He is the refuge of humans and devas. There is such a sutra. It says the Buddha's wisdom is inconceivable. All his merit and wisdom are already perfected. The Buddha's merit is not like ours. Our merit and these things are not perfected. Although some of us think we've graduated from university, but graduating from university, what you understand of all wisdom and worldly knowledge is not very much. It's tiny, 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 like graduating from elementary school. It's just that we have a kind of arrogance in our minds. But the Buddha is without fear in the entire world. Our worldly people constantly live in insecurity and fear. Why do people all take refuge in the Buddha's thought and the Buddha's wisdom? It's not only our Buddhists praising this principle. Actually, even non-Buddhists nowadays can find many realms of fearlessness and liberation from suffering to attain happiness in the Buddha's wisdom. This is also the reason. So first of all, we should try our best for everyone to dispel their own doubts and explore and research the Buddha's inconceivable wisdom. He says, now you should bring forth the power of faith and abide in the power of patience and goodness. Because for the Buddha to teach these things, first we must have faith, and there must be something like the patience of examining the Dharma to obtain such wisdom that can truly accept the Dharma, the principles that the Buddha had never taught before, that were never heard of previously, will begin to be taught today, and all will be taught subsequently. You should listen joyfully. differently. When we listen to any teaching each time, there may actually be some principles that we never heard before. Some may have been heard before, but in any case, there are always some new insights and benefits. So when listening to the teachings, everyone must take it very seriously. This is very important. The Buddha says, "Today I am reassuring you. You should not harbor doubts or fearful minds." The Buddha does not speak falsely. He speaks words of truth, and this wisdom is immeasurable. Why is this so? Because he has already accumulated vast merit and eliminated all obstacles. He has attained the supreme Dharma. This means that he has realized the true nature of all phenomena, the ultimate truth. As for what is meant by profound, it refers to something that cannot be speculated upon through conceptual thinking. So now I will teach you this profound meaning. Therefore, you should listen very well with wholehearted attention. So here, the Buddha has explained the true power of wisdom and the profound principles of wisdom. Why does the Buddha not speak falsely? We know that in the Buddha's mind stream there is no cause for speaking falsely. Why can the Buddha be proficient in all phenomena? Because he possesses the wisdom that knows the full extent of phenomena and the wisdom that knows phenomena as they are. He completely comprehends the true nature of all phenomena. As for this, some people wonder if there really is a true nature. We can refer to what the Buddha taught about the principle of the ultimate truth of all phenomena's prajna, emptiness. Any scholar or wise person in the world can explore this. In the very process of genuine exploration, we can all come to discover this. I have encountered many scholars from both East and West who think of themselves as exceptionally outstanding. From a worldly perspective, these people are at the highest level in the society. But actually, when they observe and dialogue about the Buddha's ultimate emptiness, in the end they truly have to acknowledge it in terms of reason. This is not just existence. Indeed, many people, as long as you speak reasonably, when examining these objective phenomena and their appearances or their essence, they can compare it with the Buddha's wisdom. It's not that we say the Buddha is an ancient scholar who once existed and now we just believe in him. It's not like that. His wisdom is now completely preserved in written form and exists in the world. Not to mention the Buddha's wisdom, only we talk about the Nagarjuna's wisdom, the analytical methods in each chapter in the root stanzas of the Middle Way. When we examine together with any scholar, they have to acknowledge it. When I was teaching the root stanzas of the Middle Way, I really wanted to find a scholar who refutes emptiness and an arrogant one with excessive pride, but I never found one. Perhaps it's our Buddhists who have excessive pride, but I seem to feel that with these teachings, including the analytical methods in each chapter of the root stanzas of the Middle Way, for example, how contact does not exist, how conditioned phenomena do not exist, such these principles if we use reasoning to discuss with some materialists in the world, or those who think all phenomena truly exist before these people, we don't use our faith to speak with them. At that time, they will know whether the Buddha's wisdom is inconceivable or not. At this time, after the Bhagavad spoke these verses, and he told Bodhisattva Maitreya, "I am now proclaimed to you all in this great assembly. O Maitreya, these Bodhisattva Mahasattvas, that is, these immeasurable, innumerable, incalculable Bodhisattvas who emerge from the earth, which you have never seen these Bodhisattvas before. Actually, these Bodhisattvas, after I attained Buddhahood in the Saha world, after I became a Buddha in the Saha world, I attained highest complete enlightenment. That is to say, after I became a Buddha, the Buddha said at that time, these so many Bodhisattvas, after he became a Buddha, he established them in the position of Bodhisattvas in the causal stage of perfect enlightenment. He taught and guided these Bodhisattvas, those he instructed and inspired. He tamed their minds, causing them to generate the mind of highest complete enlightenment, to generate bodhicitta, to generate the intention for the path. These bodhisattvas have been abiding in the space below my Saha world. They have all been dwelling there continuously, Shakyamuni Buddha said at that time. So these bodhisattvas are all the retinue of Shakyamuni Buddha, because the other day they asked where did they come from, what is their identity, what is their cultural background, and so on. Bodhisattva Maitreya asked many such questions. The Buddha said, these bodhisattvas are not unfamiliar beings, they are my own retinue. What have they been studying? What they study is the recitation of sutras and thorough understanding of their meaning. In Tibetan version, it says that they regularly recite sutras and receive transmissions. In Tibetan version, there is receiving transmission. As for understanding, it means hearing the Buddha's principles and also contemplating their meanings. Correct mindfulness means continuously practicing. Here, understanding, contemplating, and analyzing and correct mindfulness, in some Chinese Han Buddhism texts, they correspond to hearing, contemplating, and practicing. I think this is also very good. In Master Kuiji's The Profound Commentary on the Lotus Sutra, it says that understanding is the wisdom of hearing, contemplation is the wisdom of thinking, and mindfulness is the wisdom of meditation. Just like it says in the Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice, we normally generate the wisdom of hearing, then the wisdom of thinking, then the wisdom of meditation, these three wisdoms. That is what we regularly call hearing, contemplating, and practicing. Regarding this hearing, contemplating, and practicing, Shakyamuni Buddha once said that these bodhisattvas in the worlds below are also engaged in hearing, contemplating, and practicing. We should not think that only certain Dharma centers in the Saha world need to do hearing, contemplating, and practicing, or that the so-called hearing, contemplating, and practicing is only mentioned in certain Buddhist traditions within Tibetan Buddhism, and that Chinese Han Buddhism doesn't have hearing, contemplating, and practicing. This kind of statement is incorrect. We must be hearing, contemplating, and practicing the Dharma. We are also very much promoting this now. What do we promote? All Dharma centers should have hearing, contemplating, and practicing. If a Dharma center doesn't have hearing, contemplating, and practicing, it means the Dharma center do not have any actual practices of Dharma. If we only have a building, actually there are many, many buildings in the world. When we go to Italy, France, their buildings from hundreds or thousands of years ago are all perfectly intact and very magnificent. They have been continuously in the cities and being protected extremely well. It's not like the various countries in the East. It's not like this. But if we build a monastery, build a Dharma center, and spend several 100 million, tens of millions, but without hearing, contemplating, and practicing at all in this Dharma center, then this can be called an empty Dharma center. In the future, everyone here can be said to be pillar figures of Buddhism. In the future, there will surely be many remarkable people. But if you are remarkable, at most, you build yourself an extremely magnificent palace, but then in the entire Dharma center, besides chanting a few sutras without any other actual practices, that's not right. In the worlds below of Shakyamuni Buddha, what do these bodhisattvas usually do? Yesterday, Bodhisattva Maitreya asked, what are these bodhisattvas doing? Where did they come from? Then Shakyamuni Buddha answered as, following these dwelling below are my retinue, and what they regularly do is hearing, contemplating, and practicing. They're not building Dharma centers every day and selling tickets, or like in Tibetan Buddhism, building monasteries today and going to solicit donations every day. Actually, I always think in this way, the money is not the most lacking thing for many monasteries in Tibetan Buddhism nowadays. Now, the most important thing is the transmission cannot be lost and broken. Otherwise, if this transmission is broken for a century or for 60 years from then on, this transmission will be completely gone. Durant is the author of The Story of Civilization, has also mentioned in one of his books that if any civilization has broken for a century in the world, then this transmission and civilization are forever dead. So I'm very worried that now many of Tibetan Buddhism's inherent, especially good transmissions of hearing, contemplating, and practicing, many people are not striving for them. Instead, they insist on building some stupa, building something. Of course, these are representations of the Buddha, such as Buddha statues, temples, and stupas. On one hand, these are very important, but on the other hand, when compared with hearing, contemplation, and practice, and with receiving the transmission and transmitting the path, they amount to very little in comparison, because no matter how good this monastery is, actually it's basically the same as other buildings. If this monastery is especially dilapidated, but there are some truly great accomplished masters inside of the monastery, or if the transmission of hearing, contemplating, and practicing exist, then the appearance of the monastery story is not important at all. Actually, at our Larung Gar, when His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok was alive for nearly 20-some years, during that entire period, everyone lived in simple grass huts, all residing in modest sod houses, yet many outstanding monastic talents were cultivated. So sometimes a Dharma center doesn't necessarily need to have especially high quality and be extremely refined. Having these things is also fine. If conditions are met, this is a platform for accumulating merit and virtue. That's also acceptable. But if you don't have them, you won't lose anything either. If in the Dharma center, without transmission, hearing, contemplating, and practicing, then the Buddha's true wisdom life cannot be continued. So here we also need to have such concepts, and everyone should understand. According to Master Kuiji's The Profound Commentary on the Lotus Sutra, understanding is explained as the wisdom of hearing, contemplation is explained as the wisdom of thinking, and mindfulness is explained as the wisdom of meditation. So Han Buddhism also acknowledges hearing, contemplating, and practicing. So at that time, the Bodhisattva who is under the Buddha's world are also mainly engaged in this kind of hearing, contemplating, and practicing. The Buddha told Bodhisattva Maitreya, O Ajita, all these sons of virtuous families, these bodhisattvas, don't particularly like to gossip with many people. All of these bodhisattvas simultaneously have this kind of habit. They all have this kind of habit. They are all unwilling to gossip. They constantly delight in quiet places, diligently practicing and never resting, being very diligent. Also, they don't rely on humans and devas, many distracted humans and devas, dwelling with them, but they still constantly, deeply delight in the Buddha's profound wisdom, and without any obstacles, they study the Buddha's wisdom. They still study rather deeply. They constantly delight in the Buddha's teachings and wholeheartedly seek the Buddha's path and wisdom. Just as it's also said in the Akashagarbha Sutra, the Buddha's wisdom is true. It crosses the ocean of birth and death. Quickly seek the Buddha's wisdom and attain the end of all suffering. If we quickly seek the Buddha's wisdom, we will certainly be liberated from suffering and attain happiness. We will certainly attain the ultimate true meaning. So as for ourselves, in the future, we should take joy in removing some mistaken and distorted conceptual thinking. You see, here it really explains what kind of practitioner can be regarded as a good practitioner. So for some of our practitioners among us, regarding some worldly knowledge and various worldly people without much knowledge are unwilling to engage with them. They try their best to deeply engage in hearing, contemplating, and practicing. Regarding profound wisdom aspects, they comprehend them without any obstruction. They do not have any interest in the worldly principles and knowledge. This is also very important for a practitioner. So, as a true practitioner, we should try our best to let go of various worldly principles. We cannot completely give up all the worldly life. For example, if you're a lay person, you have your own livelihood, relationships, and job, and if you completely give up all these matters, it will be really difficult. Temporarily, it may not be realizable either. But we cannot be especially attached to the worldly matters as well. If we are especially attached to them, it seems like some of our Buddhists are even more attached than those who haven't studied Buddhism. Their attachment is also especially stubborn and firm, and their suffering is also very intense. Regarding studying the Dharma and its knowledge, they haven't gone deep into a relatively profound level at all. When they reach at a certain point, just like these bodhisattvas, maybe one will have an aspiration for quiet places. Although you may go along with worldly people regarding to the worldly phenomena, and you may speak and laugh like worldly people, there may be some worldly affections. These are all exist, but don't pay special attention to them. Do not harbor worldly love and affection. Deeply revere liberation from desire. Subdue the frivolous mind and rest the mind in quiet places. This means we don't harbor special attachment. To worldly love and affection and a very deep attachment, even giving up one's life is acceptable. If you continue holding some attachments without letting go, actually as a Buddhist this is especially shameful. In principle, we should deeply value and uphold turning away from the marvelous pleasures of the 5 desires in this world, from flashy nightlife, indulgence, and all kinds of alluring worldly desires. What we should truly cherish is genuine merit and virtue, which can fully tame and subdue the restless and agitated minds of people today. In this way, our own minds can settle and abide in a state that is quiet, peaceful, relaxed, and free. In your life, many things may happen, and on the surface you may be exactly like worldly people. You also need to eat and live. But if your inner state is completely different, as a layperson, this is also very necessary, I feel. Otherwise, some Buddhists really do seem to become more distressed the more they study, more attached the more they study, and even more troubled as their study goes on. It may be that many, many negative things in their minds keep erupting again and again without stopping, and if the people around them are all affected to some extent, this is indeed not very good. We really hope that as practitioners in different circumstances, even though we will not be able to completely cut off all these 5 desires and wondrous pleasures, we also should not be like those who have never heard any Mahayana Buddhist teachings at all, and yet cling with extremely, extremely strong attachment. Perhaps on a personal level, this is also very meaningful for you. I greatly admire this group of bodhisattvas. They still practice deeply and delighting in quiet places. Many of our lay practitioners may not have such intention, but even in the city you can sometimes reflect on yourself. Don't be too attached, don't be too troubled. Otherwise, you may become increasingly hard to tame your mind and finally completely ruin your body and mind, which would be very regrettable. Below it says the Bhagavat elaborated on this meaning in verse form. He said, Bodhisattva Maitreya, you should know that these great bodhisattvas have been learning the Buddha's wisdom since innumerable kalpas. All of these bodhisattvas have been transformed and guided by me. I caused them to give rise to the mind of unsurpassed complete enlightenment. All of these bodhisattvas are my disciples, and the world in which they abide is also this Saha world. They constantly practice ascetic practices and especially delight in quiet places. They always delight in quiet places and are willing to abandon noisy, clamorous environments. They are unwilling to stay in places crowded with many people, engaging in idle talk, gossip, and disputes. These bodhisattvas, these disciples, have studied my path and the Dharma. Day and night they are constantly diligent. For the sake of seeking the Buddha path, they have always dwelt in the space beneath the Saha world, abiding there continuously. Their willpower is extremely firm, and they constantly and diligently seek the Buddha's wisdom. In different living environments, they constantly teach various subtle teachings. Moreover, their minds are without fear. I really like these verses. They are firm in recollection, always diligently seek wisdom, expound various subtle teachings, and their minds are without fear. Everyone should remember this. It is very important. In doing anything, willpower must be firm. Then second, we must be diligent for the long term. We must seek wisdom. We must have a spirit of learning. Third, we should not keep our knowledge only to ourselves. We should help others and explain more to them. In this process, if we may encounter some difficulties, we should not be afraid or become weary. If many of you keep this in your hearts, whether propagating the Dharma for the benefit of beings or in the process of practice, it is very important. Some people say you are a bit of stubborn. Some people say you are strong. In any case, I still have some interest in people whose willpower is very firm and who are diligent for the long term, not merely staying awake for 2 or 3 days and then sleeping for 4 or 5 days afterward. That does not bring any real benefit to your practice. Because one wants to be diligent, they stay up for 2 or 3 days, but afterward cannot recover, and then sleeping twice as long later is still of no use. Also, what I understand should not always conceal, but should wholeheartedly help others. In this process, we should not be afraid, should not have a weary mind, should not have an averse mind. As long as we propagate the Dharma, as long as we benefit beings, we will certainly encounter all kinds of things. This is what the Buddha said about the characteristics of his bodhisattvas. We can also say indirectly that we are disciples passed down from the Buddha. We should also have a strong mind, a diligent mind, a mind of benefiting and teaching, and a fearless mind. These four minds everyone must remember. The Buddha said, I sat under the Bodhi tree in the city of Gaya. Regarding the city of Gaya, there are different explanations, but it should be in the kingdom of Magadha, right, near the current Bodh Gaya in India, which is a city. Some say it is a city in Bangladesh. In any case, I attained Buddhahood under the Bodhi tree, perfect enlightenment, and turned the wheel of the highest sublime Dharma. At that time, I taught and guided these bodhisattvas, causing them to give rise, for the very first time, to the mind of unsurpassed complete enlightenment. Today, they have attained non-retrogression, and in the future they will all attain perfect, complete awakening. They will become Buddhas in the future. Therefore, what I'm saying now are true words. You should have faith in this, shouldn't you? As for these bodhisattvas, I have been teaching and inspiring these beings since long ago. Here there is something that will perhaps also be answered below. On one hand, the Buddha says, after I turned the wheel of the Dharma, I caused them to generate bodhicitta. On the other hand, I have been teaching them since long ago. Actually, this will also be answered later. Actually, since long ago, these bodhisattvas should have had a connection with Shakyamuni Buddha. Being his disciples life after life is acceptable, but truly generating the mind of highest complete enlightenment during this Buddha's turning of the wheel of the Dharma, he caused them to truly mature. It should be explainable this way. Then at this time, Bodhisattva Maitreya and innumerable bodhisattvas gave rise to doubts in their minds. What kind of doubts arose? They had never had such doubts before. They thought in their minds, why has Shakyamuni Buddha been a Buddha for such a short time now, yet taught and inspired so many beings, immeasurable, limitless, incalculable great bodhisattvas, and moreover they are all established in highest complete enlightenment. Is this possible? The Buddha's attainment of Buddhahood has not been a very long time. In such a short time he has taught and inspired so many bodhisattvas who emerged from underground. This seems too many. At this time, Bodhisattva Maitreya and these bodhisattvas gave rise to doubts. It should be Bodhisattva Maitreya who spoke. Earlier, it mentioned Maitreya Bodhisattva together with innumerable bodhisattvas. It seems that in the Tibetan version, the question was asked by Maitreya Bodhisattva. He addressed the Bhagavat saying, the Tathagata was formerly Prince Siddhartha, son of King Shuddhodana. Later, he renounced household life, leaving the palace of the Shakya clan, and went to a place not far from the city of Gaya. There he sat beneath the Bodhi tree and attained unsurpassed, perfect, and complete enlightenment. From that time until now, approximately over 40 years have passed. According to the perspective of the Agama Sutras and the Abhidharma Kosha, basically he renounced at age 29, then 6 years of ascetic practice. After age 35, he began turning the wheel of the Dharma. Some say 45 years, some say 49 years. If the Lotus Sutra teaches for 8 years, then adding it all up, it is perhaps close to over 40 years. So, O Bhagavat, how could you accomplish such great job in such a short time? Of course, relying on the Buddha's might and the Buddha's merit, yes, you can do this. Teaching and inspiring such immeasurable, limitless, great assemblies of bodhisattvas, causing them to attain highest complete enlightenment in the future. You just become a Buddha in a very short time, yet your Buddha power and your power of merit have produced so many great bodhisattvas, cultivating so many bodhisattvas. They all have some doubts. They say, "O Bhagavat, as for these great bodhisattvas, suppose someone counted them for thousands of myriads of kotis of kalpas. They could not count them all clearly. There is no end to them. They cannot be counted. These bodhisattvas, since long ages past, according to principle and based on our observation, must long ago, in the presence of immeasurable and limitless Buddhas, have certainly planted roots of virtuous merit and fully accomplished the bodhisattva path. Moreover, they have also cultivated pure and immaculate conduct. Bodhisattva Maitreya and the others all think in this way, that it could not be only you, O Buddha, who trained and guided them. We still have some doubts. These are not your disciples, are they? Actually, the question they ask is still quite good. You became a Buddha in such a short time. How could you cultivate so many? This seems impossible, right? They say, oh Bhagavat, this matter is very difficult for worldly people to believe. They give an analogy. Suppose there is a person whose appearance is very dignified, whose hair is also jet black, who is just 25 years old. So this 25-year-old person points to a 100-year-old elder and says, this elder is my son. And this 100-year-old person also points to this young person and says, yes, he is my father. I am the one he gave birth to. If they say this, worldly people will find it very hard to believe. A 25-year-old person giving birth to a 100-year-old elder, if they mutually acknowledge father and son, then this matter they say, O Buddha, you are also the same. What you have said this time is exactly like this. You are like a 25-year-old young person. Your disciples are like 100-year-old elders. Your logic does not work. He said, the Buddha is also like this. You have not been enlightened for a very long time. Yet these great bodhisattvas, already in immeasurable thousands of myriads of kalpas ago, have been diligently practicing in the Buddha path. They are skilled at emerging from and entering concentration. They can be proficient in immeasurable hundreds of thousands of myriads of kotis of samadhis. Moreover, they have attained great transcendent powers. For a very long time they have practiced pure conduct. Moreover, they are skilled at learning all the good dharmas of the Buddhas in sequence. They are especially skillful at answering others' questions. They are truly jewels among humans. They are rarities in all the world. These bodhisattvas are all jewels among humans, Rinpoches. Jewel among humans means wish-fulfilling jewel. Some say Yinpoche. Some people say Rinpoche, some say Yinpoche. Now many of them, especially when they go to America and Taiwan, they pronounce Rinpoche differently. Rinpoche, Rinpoche. Some say Rinpoche, some say Yinpoche, some say Rinpoche. So they say each of these bodhisattvas is a Rinpoche. Today the Bhagavat, you say that when you attain the path, they first generated bodhicitta, those you taught and inspired, those you instructed, and moreover at this time you cause them to abide in highest complete enlightenment. The Bhagavat has not been a Buddha for very long, yet can accomplish such great acts. They say, like us, led by Bodhisattva Maitreya, I still believe the words the Buddha has spoken, because you have never spoken falsely. You have no cause for speaking falsely. Moreover, the Buddha knows everything. You are proficient in everything. However, Bodhisattva Maitreya is also skillful. Rather, he certainly has some doubt, but some of us, when asking questions, are also like this. I do believe in you. I believe in you very much. I trust you. However, perhaps some people may still have questions about this, may still worry that they may not be good for you. I worry about these people. For myself, you also know, I have followed you for such a long time. I absolutely do not have any problems. However, you must consider, you must answer them properly. Otherwise, if they have some misunderstanding, you don't know. Now, this world is especially complex. I am still care about you. It is not anything else. I don't have any other reason. I just think. They say, Rinpoche, where are you? Today we may exceed the time a bit. We just take our time. It is fine. Otherwise, if time is tight, I cannot teach very well. Bodhisattva Maitreya says, we do not have any doubts about you. We should completely believe in you. You also do not speak falsely to us. Moreover, we all know your wisdom. However, some bodhisattvas who have newly generated bodhicitta in the future after your parinirvana, if they hear such words, that is, the Buddha became a Buddha in such a short time, yet liberated so many people, they may not believe and may have difficulty to generating faith. If they do not believe, they may slander and destroy the Dharma. Finally, the karmic consequences of this wrongdoing are especially severe. The karmic consequences of destroying the Dharma are especially severe. Therefore, this time we still request the Bhagavat to remove these doubts of ours. One moment they say we have no doubts, the next moment they say we have these doubts. I think perhaps Bodhisattva Maitreya has a little doubt. In other sutras, the Buddha often says Bodhisattva Maitreya do not have doubts, but Bodhisattva Maitreya asks questions on behalf of others, which also often happens. In other sutras, there are also such cases. So here he says, remove our doubts. and also for these sons and daughters of virtuous families in the future, so they will not fall into the three lower realms. After they hear these teachings, they may not give rise to doubts. We hope the Buddha will answer us. So regarding this principle, Bodhisattva Maitreya uses verses to explain in the following. The Buddha formerly began renouncing household life from among the Shakya clan. Near the city of Gaya, sitting under the Bodhi tree, he attained the fruit of perfect, complete enlightenment. Until now, the time has not been very long. These disciples are very numerous. Their number is beyond estimation. They appear to have entered the Buddha path for a very long time. They dwell in transcendent powers. They are skilled at learning the Bodhisattva Mahayana path. Moreover, they are unstained by any worldly dharmas, just like the lotus flower is unstained by mud. These bodhisattvas suddenly emerged from the earth. They appeared before the Buddha, making offerings, showing reverence, and standing before the Buddha. This matter is very hard to believe. No matter how one thinks about it, it is hard to believe, because the time since the Buddha attained the path and full accomplishment is relatively short, yet there are so many bodhisattvas who have already attained accomplishment. Even proportionally, this seems very remarkable. If the Buddha has maintained his accomplishment for over 40 years, then so many bodhisattvas have already attained accomplishment. This is indeed very hard to believe. So in order to dispel such doubts, we hope the Buddha will explain this principle according to reason and reality in full detail. Otherwise, this principle you are now explaining truly does not make sense. Suppose a young and vigorous person is just 25 years old. He points to a 100-year-old elder saying, "This is my son." Moreover, this white-haired, wrinkle-faced person also acknowledges saying, "I am the child of this 25-year-old person." They mutually acknowledge being father and son. The 100-year-old elder says, "My father is 25 years old." The 25-year-old young person says, "My son is 100 years old." Then worldly people would also find this very hard to believe. O Bhagavat, the principle is also the same. Look, you attained the path in such a short time, yet these bodhisattvas you have cultivated have firm willpower and are without weak will. Since immeasurable kalpas, they have practiced the bodhisattva path. They are skilled at answering. Moreover, their minds are without fear. Their patience toward the Dharma and toward all things, is especially resolute. They are dignified in appearance and have the majestic power to guide sentient beings. The Buddhas of the 10 directions all praise all the conduct and so forth of these bodhisattvas. They are also skilled at discrimination. They are not like beginning bodhisattvas. They are skilled at discrimination. They do not delight in being among the multitude, constantly speaking about this and that. They dwell for the long term in quiet places, delighting in meditation and seeking the Buddha path. They constantly dwell in the space of the worlds below and to hearing, contemplating, and practicing. Here it says, after we heard the Buddha's words, our bodhisattvas does not have any doubts. However, as for some new bodhisattvas in the future, it is very hard to say. Therefore, we hope the Buddha will remove the doubts of these beings in the future. You must explain and unravel this mystery. If they give rise to some doubts about this sutra, the content of the Lotus Sutra, if they give rise to some doubts and do not generate faith, by this wrongdoing, this tremendous wrongdoing, they will directly fall into the 3 lower realms and experience immeasurable, limitless suffering. Therefore, in order to liberate these beings, O Bhagavat, today, for the sake of benefiting all sentient beings, please explain the hidden meaning discussed above. Why is it that in such a short time, with immeasurable bodhisattvas, you cause them to generate bodhicitta, and moreover, they all attain the fruit of non-retrogression? This principle you must explain to us, otherwise there will be no way to understand. Just as they were asking in this way, this session has concluded, so in between we need to insert a commercial break. Next is the chapter on the lifespan of the Tathagata, and we should be learned this principle.
Larung Gar Miracle, Larung Gar Miracle, Om Bantarangara Banma Sodargye